My name is Angela Carter. I am 62 years old. All my life I've had only one daughter, Hannah, the one and only pride I raised after my husband passed away early. I spent my entire youth working tirelessly, building a career, saving every dollar so my daughter could have a full and comfortable life. And when her engagement day came, I thought I would finally see the result of all those sacrifices. But right there, in the lavishly decorated room, under glittering lights and in front of hundreds of guests, Hannah turned to me, smiled, and said, "This is Angela. She's basically just the nanny who raised me." Awkward laughter followed, and pitying eyes pierced straight into me. In that moment, it felt like my heart was torn apart. I had paid for everything in this extravagant party, from the diamond ring, the jazz band, and down to every flower on the table, yet in the end, my daughter saw me as nothing more than the help. If it were you, what would you do? Swallow the humiliation to keep the peace? Or stand up and reclaim the respect that rightfully belongs to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touches your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to continue following these dramatic family stories where love, betrayal, and unexpected twists are always intertwined. And now, let me tell you what happened after that painful moment. I still remember that moment clearly. The jazz music stopped abruptly, and every pair of eyes in the room turned to me. The space, once warm, suddenly felt cold as ice. I stood frozen, clutching the small purse I had carefully chosen for this party. Inside was still the receipt for the diamond ring Hannah wore, glittering on her hand, a gift I had paid for myself without a word of hesitation. I swallowed the lump in my throat, telling myself not to let the tears fall. "Angela, don't cry. Don't let them see your heart tearing apart," I whispered inwardly. But in my head, Hannah's voice still echoed, "She's just the nanny." My eyes darted around, hoping for a sympathetic glance, a word of defense. But there was nothing. Friends, niece relatives, everyone looked down, pretending to be busy with their wine glasses or phones. Even David, Hannah's fiancé, the man I once thought would be her pillar, just stood there, his hand holding hers tightly, his lips pressed shut, his eyes avoided mine. Cold. As if I had never been the mother of the bride to be standing next to him. I stepped back a little, trying not to drown in the whispers around me. A distant aunt leaned over and muttered to her companion, "So embarrassing, Hannah went too far." The other replied quickly, "But maybe she was just joking. Don't make it a big deal." "A joke," I gave a bitter smile. How could a joke cut like a knife, stabbing straight into the heart of the one who had raised her? I remembered the years when it was just the two of us struggling in a tiny rented apartment. I worked myself to exhaustion in the hospital, pulling double shifts, so Hannah could have nice clothes like her friends. I remembered the winter nights when my hands went numb from taking extra shifts. But just seeing her sleeping peacefully on the bed warmed me again. And now, in front of everyone, she could deny it all, reducing me to the help. I was about to walk out, but the chuckle of a few guests behind me stopped me. They didn't even try to hide the amusement in their eyes. A middle-aged man sneered, "When you've got money, your kids don't value you anymore." Such a shame. I turned away, trying not to tremble. Inside me, an emptiness grew, cold and vast. I realized that all those years of sacrifice, all that effort, meant nothing in Hannah's eyes. I wasn't a mother. Not the one who held her through fevers. Not the one who gave up her own dreams for her sake. I was just a shadow. A servant. A nanny. David stepped closer, lowering his voice but still loud enough for me to hear. "Angela, don't escalate this. Hannah was just emotional." I stared straight at him, my eyes dry, though my heart pounded in my chest. "Emotional? You think calling your own mother the nanny is just being emotional, David faltered slightly. But then forced a calm tone. This is a happy day. We should let go of small things. Small things, I sighed. To him. Perhaps my lifetime of sacrifice was just a small thing. I sank into an empty chair, looking up at the stage where Hannah was laughing brightly. As if her words hadn't cut me to the core. Guests raised their glasses again. The music resumed. And everything carried on as though nothing had happened. Everything except me. I was no longer the same. In that moment, I realized a bitter truth. My whole life I had been mistaken. I thought unconditional love would earn respect. I thought silent endurance would bring peace. But all it brought me was contempt. I had become the help in my own life. An old friend, Linda, approached, placing her hand on my shoulder. Angela, don't take it to heart. Every daughter slips with her words sometimes. I gave her a faint smile. Have you ever heard a daughter introduce her mother as the help? Linda fell silent, then gently shook her head. She said nothing more, just sighed and walked away. I sat there a little longer, emotions churning inside me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I only felt the pain inside me settling down, making way for something else hard, cold as steel. The party went on, guests still laughing and chatting. But in my heart, a decision was forming. I was no longer the weak woman waiting to be pitied. I had given everything. And now I understood my worth was not for anyone to trample on. I stood up and quietly left the bright hall. Outside, the sea breeze swept through the hotel corridor, carrying a sharp chill. I pulled my shawl tighter around me and whispered to myself, enough. Angela, enough. I returned home close to midnight. The road was empty. Streetlights shimmering across the windshield like shards of broken glass. In the rearview mirror, my face looked pale, my eyes sunken with exhaustion. No more music. No more forced laughter, only silence, pressing heavily inside the car. Crossing the threshold. The house that had always felt familiar suddenly seemed cold and distant. I switched on the living room light. The soft yellow glow spilling over the picture frames on the wall, photos of me and Hannah when she was a child. Our first trip to the Grand Canyon. Her in her college graduation gown. In every picture, my smile was bright. My hand always clasping hers, as if to promise I would never let go. I drew a deep breath, then walked toward the small office at the end of the hallway. In the corner stood a black safe, cold and imposing. One I rarely opened in recent years. I bent down, turned the dial, and with a heavy click, the door swung open. Inside lay neatly stacked files, each bundle carefully labeled. I pulled up a chair, sat down, my hands trembling but my gaze sharpening. The first folder I pulled out was the purchase contract for the penthouse where Hannah lived. The thick white paper bore my signature at the bottom, clear and decisive. I remembered the day I signed it. Hannah threw her arms around me. Mom, I can't believe I get to live in such a luxurious place. I promise I'll pay you back every dollar. I smiled then, answering, all I need is for you to be happy. Hannah. Yet today, she had forgotten it all. In her eyes, that apartment belonged to her. No connection to the woman who had paid for every brick. I set the folder aside and picked up another, the paperwork for the family business. A small chain of restaurants. Nothing grand like big-name brands, but enough to support me and Hannah all these years. Lease agreements, debt invoices, profit reports. Every document bore my name. I remembered those first days of opening the diner, cooking and cleaning, sometimes carrying Hannah on my shoulder as she dozed off while I rushed to serve customers. I let out a bitter laugh. To her, none of that weighed as much as the cruel words she flung at me at the engagement party. Finally, I pulled out the stack of wedding and engagement party invoices, each one stamped and sealed. Each payment drawn directly from my account: the diamond ring, the wedding dress, the jazz band, the 5-star hotel, the imported flowers. I ran my hand over the pages, a swell of pain and anger rising in my chest. The ticking clock on the wall sounded louder, each beat urging me forward. I asked myself, when did I let my daughter start looking down on me? Was it when I silently paid her staggering tuition bills and she never once asked, "Mom, are you okay?" Or was it when I sold my only car to give her capital for a startup, only for it to fail? And she blamed me for being unlucky. Memories came crashing down. Suffocating, I sat still, whispering hoarsely to myself, if I'm nothing but a nanny, then no one needs my money anymore. The words slipped out, meant only to ease the ache. Yet they shook me to my core. I looked around the room. These stacks of papers weren't just assets, they were blood, sweat, my entire life. And I realized I had given it all away, with no conditions. Only for her to deny me. In that moment, a thought flashed fierce, but crystal clear. I had the right to decide everything. I was no longer the mother cast out of her own celebration. I was the owner of these contracts. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and inside me I heard a sharp snap, as if chains long bound around me had finally broken. My phone buzzed. On the screen was a message from Hannah. Mom, I hope you got home safe. I'm sorry if I misspoke. But don't overthink it. I love you. I stared at the words. A vague, hollow apology. No mention of what she had said. No hint of sincerity. I set the phone down without replying. Outside the window, the city still blazed with lights. I looked back at the files. My hands no longer trembled as they had when I entered the room. The pain had begun to give way to something else: cold clarity. I whispered again. But this time, my voice was firm. Like a vow, if I'm just the nanny, then don't expect me to keep funding their dreams. And I began laying out each file on the desk, like a strategist placing pieces on a chessboard. A new game, and this time, I would make the first move. I sat for a long time at my desk, the yellow light spilling over the stacks of files as if covering them with the dust of the past. Inside me, the sting of pain still lingered, but mixed with it was an unusual calm. For the first time in many years, I wasn't crying, wasn't pleading, wasn't trying to smooth things over. I knew what I had to do. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. The first name that appeared was Melissa, wedding planner. My hand trembled slightly, but then I took a deep breath and pressed call. Hello, Angela. I was just reviewing the contract for next week. Everything looks good, Melissa's cheerful voice rang out. I cut her off, my tone low but firm. Melissa, I'm calling to inform you that I want to cancel everything. The line went silent for a few seconds. Then she gave a small laugh, thinking I was joking. Cancel? Do you mean just a part of it? Or maybe adjust the schedule? No. I was clear. Cancel everything. The wedding, the party, all of it. I heard papers shuffling. Then her tone dropped. But Angela, the contracts are under your name. Yes. But this is so last minute. There will be penalties, I interrupted again. I know. But it's my money. I'll take responsibility. Silence stretched. At last, she sighed. I'll begin the process. You're certain? Absolutely. I hung up, my heart pounding. Yet inside, I felt a strange relief. I didn't stop there. Right after, I called the florist, the caterer, then the band. Each time, I repeated the words, I want to cancel the contract. My spine straightened a little more. My voice grew clearer. One man from the catering service tried to reason with me. But Angela, We've already prepared ingredients. Created a menu for 300 guests. If you cancel now, all that work will go to waste. I replied evenly. The waste of your efforts still holds more value than the waste of a mother humiliated by her own daughter. I'll pay the cancellation fees. That's enough. The line fell silent. Then they agreed. Each call was a step toward freedom. I pictured the day Hannah and David, along with their families, walked into the grand hall. But instead of white roses filling the room, they'd find an empty, cold space. No band. No banquet. No wine. They would be shocked. Then furious. And only then would they understand everything they flaunted was never theirs. It was mine. I sat back, my hands trembling from the adrenaline, but my lips curling into a faint smile. For years, I had lived in fear of losing my child, fear of losing family, fear of being called selfish. But now I realized it was because I feared that they dared to treat me with contempt. My eyes fell on another folder, the ownership papers for the restaurant chain I had built over decades. From nothing, I opened the first little diner in a small neighborhood. I remembered clearly the night it opened. Hannah sitting at the counter, her eyes sparkling with pride. I once thought that one day, when I grew old, I would leave it all to her. That was why I worked myself to exhaustion to secure a future for Hannah. But the moment she called me the nanny, I knew if I left it to her, everything would dissolve into arrogance and selfishness. She would never value it. Rebecca's face appeared in my mind, my younger sister. We had been close. But for years the family looked down on her because she chose to be an elementary school teacher, with low pay and little prestige. At family gatherings, even Hannah once sneered, "Aunt Rebecca has nothing worth learning from." I always stayed quiet, only looking at my sister, knowing in my heart she was a kind, decent woman who loved children. My hand rested on the folder. Another decision began to take shape, not out of emotion, but reason. I whispered, "Rebecca deserves it more." The very next morning, I met with my lawyer, Mr. Grant, the man who had overseen many of my business contracts. I looked startled when I spoke. "I want to transfer ownership of my restaurant chain to my sister, Rebecca Sullivan, not to Hannah." He frowned. "Angela, are you sure? This is a major asset. Typically, the daughter would be the rightful heir." I met his eyes steadily, my voice unwavering. "I used to think that too. But now I know. Not everyone with the title of child deserves the work of a mother's lifetime." Mr. Grant nodded slowly. "If you're certain, I'll prepare the paperwork. But remember, once you sign, there's no going back." I smiled, feeling lighter. That's exactly what I want. Let's proceed. When I signed the document, my hand no longer trembled like it had the night before. The strokes were firm, as if slicing through invisible chains. I pictured Rebecca's face when she received the news, surely stunned, then moved to tears. But I knew she would use it to nurture kindness, not vanity. Leaving the lawyer's office, I lifted my face to the clear blue sky. A strange feeling surged inside me, an ease I had never known. For years, I had trembled at the thought of losing family. But in that moment I realized, only when fear is gone can freedom truly begin. That evening, I sat by the window, gazing out at the little garden. On the table were the stamped papers confirming all the cancellations. My phone buzzed endlessly, missed calls from Hannah, from David, from relatives. I didn't pick up. I simply sipped my hot tea, letting the warmth spread through me. For the first time in years, I felt it clearly. I was no longer afraid. I was no longer the mother looked down upon. I was Angela Carter, and I had just reclaimed the power stolen from me by my own silence. The pounding on the door came just before dawn. I had just poured myself a cup of tea when I heard Hannah's sobbing voice outside the porch. Mom. Please. Open the door. We need to talk. I'm begging you. I set the cup down and walked slowly to the door. When it cracked open, there was my daughter's face, eyes swollen red, mascara smudged, hair a tangled mess. She rushed forward, clutching my hand, her voice breaking. Mom, stop this. You're destroying my future. I can't lose everything over one slip of the tongue. I stood still, not pulling my hand back, not embracing her either. My heart still hurt. But that pain no longer made me tremble. I gently loosened her grip, then turned back inside. Hannah hurried after me, her heels clicking hard against the wooden floor. I sat at the dining table, pulling out a thick stack of documents from the drawer. Heavy papers, stamped in red. My signature clear at the bottom of each page. I pushed them toward Hannah. Look, I said quietly, my tone calm but cold. Everything you call your future, it all bears my name. Hannah's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. I saw her fingers clench so tightly they turned white. But this is my wedding with David. This is our home. No. I cut in. This is my money. This is my signature. You haven't paid a single dollar. She choked, tears filling her eyes. But this time, I felt no pity. At that moment, the door swung open again. David walked in. His suit rumpled as if thrown on in haste, his face tight with annoyance. He didn't look at me first. He went straight to Hannah, pulling her into his arms. Honey, calm down. I'll handle this. Then he turned sharply to me, his tone harsh. Mrs. Angela, this is truly selfish. This is your daughter's most important day. How could you ruin everything over one careless remark? I lifted my head and met his eyes. Steady and unflinching. Selfish David. Do you know how many invoices, how many contracts are on this table? Who signed them? Who paid for them? David faltered, then quickly composed himself. He pulled out a chair, sat down, trying to keep his voice even. Fine. If you feel you've done too much, then my family will take over. We don't need your money anymore. My lips curled into a natural, bitter smile. Good. Then let them pay. Starting now. Hannah whipped her head toward David, panic flashing. David, do you mean it? Your family will cover everything? The venue? The honeymoon? All of it. David's eyes flickered, his throat tightening. I'll discuss it with my parents. They'll understand. This is our wedding. After all. Watching that, I felt a strange lightness. For the first time, Hannah heard hesitation from the fiancé she idolized. I lifted my cup, sipped my tea calmly, then said, if your family truly wants to prove their love, let them pay every expense today. The venue has been canceled. But if you're quick, you can rebook. You know, in San Diego. The best places don't wait for anyone. David clenched his jaw, unable to answer. Hannah burst into tears, burying her face in his shoulder. Mom, please, you can't do this. I promise I'll change. I promise I'll apologize. Just don't abandon me now. I quietly rose and walked toward the window. Outside, the morning sun lit up the garden, each ray pure and clear. I turned back, my eyes meeting my daughter's, the girl I once thought was my entire world. Hannah, I haven't abandoned you. You abandoned me when you stood in front of everyone and called me the help. You chose to humiliate me before them all. And now you want me to keep swallowing that humiliation just so you can have a future built on my money, Hannah stammered, her voice breaking. But I was just angry. I didn't mean it. Didn't mean it. I shook my head. Your words revealed the truth in your heart. You never saw me as your mother, only as a wallet. And this wallet is closed. David stood, pulling Hannah toward the door. Enough. We don't need to hear more. Keep your money. My family will handle everything. I nodded. Good. I'll be watching. In my eyes, there was no anger left. Only clarity. They walked out, the door closing behind them, leaving silence to flood the room. I turned back to the stack of documents on the table. Each sheet now stood as proof of the truth I had given everything. And I alone chose to end it. I sat down again, resting my hands on the table, feeling my heartbeat steady. For the first time in years, I felt truly strong. Not because I spoke sharp words, but because I dared to choose myself instead of living as a shadow behind my daughter. I knew this was only the beginning of more confrontations to come. But in that moment, looking straight into Hannah and David's eyes, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. I thought I had braced myself for storms. But I never expected Hannah would choose to publicly paint me as the villain before everyone. That afternoon, just as I sat down by the window, my phone buzzed nonstop. Messages poured in from friends, old colleagues, even relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all sending me the same link. I opened it and saw my own daughter's face. Hannah appeared on the screen, her eyes red, her voice trembling. Everyone. I don't even know how to say this, but my own mother canceled everything. She's jealous of my happiness. I just wanted a complete wedding. And yet she wants to ruin it all. She never truly loved me. She's toxic. She's a toxic mother. She paused, wiped her tears, then went on. Please, pray for us to overcome this. I never thought the day would come when my own mother would turn her back on me. The video lasted barely 3 minutes. But it was enough to make my blood boil. Not a single word of it was true. I had never been jealous of my daughter. All I wanted was her happiness. And for that, I had paid with my entire life. I scrolled down to the comments. Hundreds. Then thousands appeared. My God. What a selfish mom. Who does that on her daughter's wedding day? Forget her. Hannah. Focus on your happiness. Toxic mom. So scary. I sat frozen, gripping the phone tight. More painful than Hannah's accusations was the cold judgment of strangers, people who knew nothing of the truth, yet eagerly joined in on a story crafted with tears. The phone buzzed again. This time it was Linda, my sister-in-law. Her voice rushed. Flustered. Angela. I just saw the video. I don't know what you did. But Hannah is suffering. The whole family's talking. You should explain. I let out a bitter laugh. Explain? Who wants to hear me? Linda, they only want someone to blame. And Hannah just handed them the perfect role. Linda hesitated. But if you stay silent, people will assume you're guilty. Linda. I've stayed silent my whole life. But this time, my silence isn't cowardice. I want the truth to speak for itself. I hung up, eyes turning to the window. A heavy stillness settled, broken only by the rustle of leaves in the wind. Then the unexpected happened. That night, while the storm of opinions still raged, a new clip surfaced from an anonymous account. The quality was grainy, but clear enough to show the engagement party. In it, Hannah turned to me, her lips smiling but her words sharp as a knife. This is Angela. She's basically just the nanny who raised me. The audio was clear, undeniable. Then the camera panned briefly to my face, stunned, frozen. The whispers, the awkward laughter of guests were all captured. The clip spread quickly, captioned, "This is the truth. Watch and judge for yourself." Reactions flipped within hours. The comments under Hannah's tearful video turned upside down. Oh my God. She really said that to her own mom. Too much. Now I understand why Angela did what she did. Who could stand being humiliated in front of 100 people? This bride is beyond selfish. That mother isn't toxic, the daughter is. I stared at the screen. My heart aching yet warmed. Aching. Because my humiliation was now public. But warmed. Because at last, the truth had found its way into the light. That night, Hannah called me. Her voice panicked. "Mom, did you see who posted that clip? You're behind this. Aren't you?" I sighed. Answering calmly, "I don't need secret recordings to prove anything. You said it. You created this truth. You're destroying me. Do you know how humiliated I'll be?" Humiliated, Hannah. "Did you ever think about how I felt when you turned me into a joke in front of 100 guests?" Hannah broke down, reduced to sobs. Then David grabbed the phone. His tone sharp. "Angela, you need to stop this. You've gone too far. People are attacking Hannah. And that's your fault." I laughed a dry, cutting laugh. But firm. "No. David, these are the consequences of your own actions. I won't carry them for you anymore." I ended the call, leaving the phone buzzing furiously on the table. Outside, the uproar raged on. People shared the clip, argued on forums. Some condemned Hannah's ingratitude. Some sympathized with me. Others simply watched. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone in the truth. I leaned back in my chair, eyes closed. My heart still raced. But not from fear this time, from something different. A quiet strength rising within me. They could smear me with false tears. But the truth has its own way. And this time, the truth was on my side. I thought I had endured enough being humiliated by my daughter, being painted as the villain online, then watching public opinion flip because of an unexpected clip. But as it turned out, the biggest shock had yet to come. That evening, while sitting at my desk checking unfinished work emails, I happened to see a strange notification from the bank. Payment confirmation, Maldives resort. I frowned. I hadn't booked any trip. My heart pounded as I clicked it open. The message was clear. "Thank you for booking a 14-night honeymoon at Maldives overwater villa, including private butler service, personal yacht, and premium champagne. Total cost, $28,000. Payment by American Express card, ending in 3,921. That was my card. I sat frozen, as if a bucket of ice water had been dumped over me. My hand shook as I scrolled down to the line that read, "Guests Hannah Carter, David Whitaker." I read it again and again, praying I was mistaken. But the truth glared back. Merciless. I dropped my head onto the desk, my stomach twisting. My daughter was not only ungrateful, she and her fiancé had brazenly used my card to pay for a lavish honeymoon. Knowing full well, every dollar in that account was my life's hard-earned work. I was about to shut the computer when my eyes landed on another folder. Scholarship Fund. Memorial Fund. It was the fund I had created after my husband, Robert, passed away. I had wanted to use part of the restaurant profits to help orphans, because I knew what it meant to lose parents so young. In my heart, it was my way of keeping Robert alive, preserving his love and kindness. I opened the transaction report. The numbers slashed across me like blades. 3 large withdrawals in the past 2 months, 5,000, 7,500, then 10,000. More than $20,000 in total. The name of the withdrawal, Hannah Carter. My chest tightened. My breath shallow. I whispered aloud, "Dear God, Hannah. How could you?" Memories flooded back. I remembered the day I took Hannah to the scholarship's launch event. She had stood beside me, smiling for photos, hugging my shoulders, saying, "Mom, I'm so proud of you. Dad must be proud too." I believed her. I was happy. I thought my daughter would honor her father's legacy. And now, she had treated that fund as her personal wallet for shallow indulgence. I sat motionless for a long time, until tears spilled down uncontrollably. Not the tears of a mother insulted, but of a woman realizing the most sacred values of her family had been betrayed at the root. The phone rang. It was David. I wiped my face. Answered. His voice rushed. Urgent. Angela. We need to talk. Hannah is falling apart. Social media is tearing her apart. You have to help us stop this. I laughed coldly. Help? You just took $28,000 from my card for a honeymoon. You let Hannah drain the orphan fund, and you think I'll still help you. Silence on the other end. Then I heard Hannah sobbing. Then screaming, Mom, you know I didn't mean it, I only borrowed it. I'll pay it back. I gripped the phone tighter. Borrowed. Do you know that fund was for children without parents? Do you know how your father died? And that I created it to honor him. You stole from those children. Hannah. And you dare call it borrowing? Hannah fell silent. Only sobs remained. David jumped in. His tone desperate. Angela. We'll return it. I promise. We're just strapped for cash. We needed a perfect wedding to impress my family. After that, when my career stabilizes, we'll pay it all back. I cut him off. My voice turning sharp as steel. You want to impress your family with money stolen from the dead and from orphans. That's your family's standard. No reply. Then the line went dead. I sat there in the stillness. My eyes dry. My tears had run out. In their place burned a cold, enduring anger, no longer explosive, but steady as iron. I walked to the shelf and took down an old photo, Robert smiling brightly, holding Hannah as a child. My hand trembled as I touched the wooden frame. My voice rasped, Robert, do you see? The girl you loved has betrayed everything you believed in. I tried to preserve it, but she trampled it. I cannot let your legacy become a mockery. I sat back down, opened my notebook, and began writing down every detail: expenses, transactions, evidence. Each stroke of my pen was firm, deliberate. At that moment, I knew this was no longer about money. It was about the ultimate betrayal of family values, and I would not let it pass as another silence. Inside me, a fire had ignited. Not loud, not showy, but steady, and it would burn away every lie. That day, I received an unexpected call from the Whitakers, David's parents. His mother's voice came over the line, pleading but tinged with the subtle pressure of the wealthy. Angela, we need to meet. This has gone too far. Let's resolve this as adults for the sake of both families' reputation. I stayed silent for a few seconds, then agreed. But this time, I would not go alone. The meeting took place in a private conference room of a luxury hotel, crystal chandeliers sparkling above. Sleek leather chairs lined around the table. Glasses of water had been set out. Untouched, the air was heavy, like the calm before a storm. The Whitakers sat on one side, the parents, David with a tense face, and Hannah, her eyes red but her posture still defiant. I sat opposite them, with my lawyer beside me, Mr. Grant, silver-haired, steady, his eyes sharp and cold. Mr. Whitaker spoke first, his voice polite yet firm. Angela, I think you should reconsider. This wedding isn't just about Hannah and David, but the honor of two families. We cannot allow hundreds of guests to witness such a disgrace. I replied, my tone even. Honor isn't something you buy with money, and it isn't my duty to protect your family from embarrassment. Mrs. Whitaker jumped in, her voice sharper. You are the mother. It is your duty to support your daughter. How can you be so cruel? Surely you wouldn't cancel everything over one careless word. I turned to Hannah. She avoided my eyes, then suddenly broke down crying. Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong. But you can't abandon me now. I need you. I can't lose everything. I slowly placed a folder on the table. The soft thud of paper against wood silenced the room. Mr. Grant slid the folder toward them and spoke clearly. These are notarized legal documents. Mrs. Angela has transferred ownership of the entire restaurant chain to her sister, Rebecca Sullivan. The remaining assets will go into a charity fund in her late husband's name. From this point forward, Hannah has no claim. I looked straight at my daughter. My voice firm. From now on, your aunt will inherit. As for you, you chose to treat me as a stranger, and I will not allow your father's legacy to be trampled any further. Hannah's sobs erupted into a scream. No, you can't do this. I'm your real daughter. I have rights. Rebecca is nothing. She didn't sacrifice her whole life for me like you did. I clenched my fists, but kept my tone steady. It is precisely because I sacrificed my whole life that I now understand love cannot become chains. You used, betrayed, and disrespected my blood and sweat. You have no rights. Hannah, rights belong only to kindness and gratitude. David shot to his feet. His face flushed. Enough. This is a farce. Angela, you're selfish. You just want control over everything. You don't want Hannah to be free. If you don't restore what you canceled, we will, Mr. Grant cut in. His voice like steel. And what will you do, Sue? Go ahead. But remember, every contract, every payment bears Angela's name. The law does not protect those who live off someone else's wallet. The room thickened with silence. I saw David's face pale. His eyes flicked toward his parents. The Whitakers said nothing. They lowered their heads, avoiding my gaze, as if realizing everything their son and future daughter-in-law had relied on was nothing but illusion. Hannah lunged forward, falling to her knees beside me, clutching my hand. Mom, please, I'm begging you. I'll change. I'll return the scholarship money. I'll do anything. Just don't give everything to Rebecca. Don't abandon me. I looked down at her tear-streaked face, but inside me, instead of weakness, there was only emptiness. Slowly, I withdrew my hand, speaking softly. Each word, like a blade, you abandoned me long ago. Hannah, the day you stood before hundreds of people and called me the help. You abandoned me. Her sobs echoed through that opulent room, harsher than any accusation. David grabbed her hand, pulling her up. He snarled, "Let's go. We don't need her anymore." They stormed out, the door slamming shut behind them. I watched them leave, a deep sadness rising in me. Yet mingled with the sadness was a strange relief, as if the chain that had bound me for years had finally snapped. Left in the room were only me, Mr. Grant, and the Whitakers, still sitting in silence. At last, Mrs. Whitaker sighed. Angela, I never imagined it would come to this. But, I understand. They quietly stood and left, leaving me alone with the folder on the table. I ran my hand over its cover, and inside me, a voice whispered, I did the right thing. For the first time in many years, I no longer trembled when facing family, my daughter, or anyone else. I knew this confrontation was never just about money. It was about respect. And finally, I had given that respect back to myself. The news began to leak just a few days after that family meeting. At first, it was only a few cryptic posts from guests who had attended the engagement party. Never bite the hand that fed you. $1 million wedding bankrolled by your elderly mother. What a joke. Soon, the pieces came together. An account on a well-known wedding forum dropped the truth: every contract for the venue, catering, flowers, photography, the band, all under my name. Angela Carter. The comment section exploded. People demanding answers from Hannah and David. The next day, a local online paper ran the headline, "Lavish Wedding Cancelled. The Shocking Truth Behind It Stuns the City." In the article, an anonymous hotel employee confirmed Mrs. Carter was the one who signed and paid. Without her, the event could not exist. When I read it, I felt no satisfaction. Instead, a deep sadness. Yet, at the same time, I felt justice slowly being restored. My phone buzzed nonstop. Some vendors even sent me personal emails, clearly stating, "We work directly with you. Not Hannah. We're prepared to provide evidence if necessary." I saved them all, not because I wanted lawsuits, but to remind myself what I had built, what I had sacrificed for, was not an illusion. It was real, and no one could erase that truth. Meanwhile, on the other side, Hannah's downfall began. First came the penthouse. I had always been the legal owner. After the family meeting, I decided to sell it and invest in the charity fund. Within a week, it was in new hands. Photos of Hannah dragging suitcases out of the luxury building surfaced online. The caption dripping with irony, "The princess loses her castle." Then came the Maldives honeymoon. The hotel sent an email confirming the reservation was cancelled because the card had been locked. Screenshots of the bill, $28,000 charged to me, spread like wildfire. Outrage followed. "Using your mom's money for your honeymoon. Greedy beyond belief. Shameless." Social media tore the story apart. Memes about the bridezilla flooding every corner of the internet. Hannah's friends, once smiling beside her in sparkling photos, fell silent. Some unfollowed her. Others blocked her entirely. Whispers reached me. Her college friends had left the group chat for good. The breaking point came when David, the same man who had promised to cover everything officially, broke off the engagement. A small society column reported, "David Whitaker ends engagement to Hannah Carter," citing incompatible values. I wasn't surprised. From the meeting, I had already seen the cold look in his eyes. To his family, Hannah held no value once she no longer stood on the financial foundation I provided. That night, Hannah called me. Her voice shook. Broken. "Mom, I have nothing left. My friends abandoned me. David left me. I lost the house. Lost everything. Please, give me another chance. I'll change." I went still. For a brief moment. My mother's instinct ached to hold her, shield her from the storm. But then I remembered the cold arrogance in her eyes when she called me the help at her engagement. The numbers she had stolen from the orphan scholarship fund. I sighed. "Hannah, you're paying the price for your own choices. No one took anything from you. You lost it yourself." She screamed, "But I'm your daughter, I have the right to be forgiven." I closed my eyes, my voice lowering. "Motherhood is sacred. But it is not an excuse for you to exploit, betray, and destroy the values of this family. You've gone too far." Silence on the line, only her heavy breathing. Then the call cut off. I sat alone, listening to the clock tick in the empty house. Part of me was numb with pain, but another part stronger whispered that the truth had finally come out. The next day, I walked through the neighborhood. A few neighbors nodded kindly, their eyes filled with sympathy. An elderly flower seller leaned close and said, "Angela, I saw the news. You did the right thing. Children who don't know gratitude only stray further the more you give." I smiled faintly, feeling a small weight lift. The story of Hannah and her failed wedding became the talk of coffee shops and gatherings. But this time, I wasn't judged. People no longer saw me as the toxic mother in Hannah's lies, but as a woman who had dared to stand up and reclaim her respect. And Hannah, she truly became a laughingstock. No wedding dress. No penthouse. No Maldives honeymoon. All that remained was the echo of a fall so hard it shook everything she thought she had. A fall she had paved for herself. After all the storms, I chose to leave the city that held so many memories, some sweet, some bitter. I moved into a small house by the sea in Santa Barbara, a white-walled cottage with a red-tiled roof, its windows opening directly to the ocean. Every morning, the sound of waves crashing against the shore, mixed with the cries of seagulls, became the melody that opened each new day. I opened a little book cafe on the corner near my home. Not big, not flashy, but warm and inviting. Wooden shelves lined with old books I had collected over the years. The scent of freshly roasted coffee mingling with the faint fragrance of yellowed paper. Together they created something unique. I named it Robert's Corner, a way to keep my husband close to me. Every dollar of profit from the cafe went straight into the scholarship fund for orphans, the same fund Hannah once drained without hesitation, but one I was now more determined than ever to protect. Most of the customers were locals. Some elderly couples came to read the morning paper. Students dropped by to study in groups. And tourists passing through often stopped when they saw the small wooden sign outside here. You'll find an old book and a warm cup of coffee. One afternoon, a young woman no more than 20 walked in. She picked a worn-out novel and sat quietly in the corner. When she came to pay, she whispered, "Mrs. Carter, I received a scholarship from your fund last year. Without it, I probably would have had to drop out. I just want to say, thank you." I froze. Meeting her, bright, shining eyes, my heart tightened. But it was the kind of gentle ache that no longer hurt. I placed my hand on her shoulder and smiled. "Thank you for coming. Study hard, that's the greatest gift you can give me." When the door closed behind her, I stood still. My chest filled with a strange peace. What I had lost might never return. But what I was planting now had the power to grow far beyond the pain. In the afternoons, I often sat on the second-floor balcony of the cafe, looking straight out at the ocean. Santa Barbara sunsets were always indescribably beautiful, the fiery red sun sinking into the horizon, leaving trails of orange and pink across the shimmering water. I sat there with a notebook, a cup of hot jasmine tea, and let the waves speak to me like whispers from the sea. Many times, I thought of Hannah, not to blame her, but as memories I could never erase. I remembered her as a child, running in the yard, calling Mom with that sweet, innocent voice. I remembered her gripping my hand at her graduation, saying, "Mom, you're the reason I'm standing here today." Then the more recent memories surfaced, the cold eyes, the sharp words like knives, the money she withdrew without a shred of guilt. These memories came and went, like waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes violent, but eventually dissolving back into the vast sea. One evening, Rebecca, my sister, came by the cafe. She sat across from me, her fingers wrapped around a hot cappuccino, her eyes misty as she spoke. "Angela, I don't even know how to thank you. You gave me an entire legacy. I promise I'll manage the restaurants with kindness, to keep alive what you and Robert built." I held her hand and smiled. "I didn't give it to burden you. I gave it because I know you understand its true value, not for showing off, but for bringing good to the community. And I know you'll do just that." We sat there for a long time. No need for many words, only the sound of waves, the ocean breeze rustling through the palm trees, witnesses to the rebirth of a family bond I once thought lost. When night fell, I returned to the balcony. The moonlight shimmered on the ocean like silver. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and let the salty wind brush against my skin. My voice rose inside me, low and steady. I once believed that a mother's love was eternal. But love without respect becomes nothing more than chains. And I broke those chains not for revenge, but for freedom. When I opened my eyes, The horizon glowed with thousands of stars. I smiled softly. After all, the ruins. I had finally found peace not in anyone's forgiveness, but in my own choice to stand for myself. Sitting on the balcony, watching the fiery sunset sink slowly into the sea, I couldn't help but think, maybe many of you, listening up to this point, are feeling different emotions. If it were you when your own child cornered you, belittled you, and betrayed you, what would you do? Would you stay silent, enduring it all just to preserve the fragile image of a family already cracked, or would you choose to stand up, cut those painful chains, and reclaim your freedom and dignity? Each person will have a different answer. For me, silence is no longer weakness. It is the beginning of a new strength. And sometimes, only when we dare to let go, do we finally discover the peace we truly deserve. I want to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and share how this story made you feel. If you've ever faced painful moments in your family, speak up, because who knows? Your story might give strength to someone else. And if today's story touched your heart, don't forget to follow the channel Shattered Trust. There are many more stories ahead about family bonds, betrayal, and unexpected turning points in life. Stories that may bring you to tears but will also leave behind hope and a deep sense of connection. Because in the end, we all deserve a true home, one where love walks hand in hand with respect,